The alarm bells never stopped ringing on Kepler Station. They had been screaming for 3 days straight, filling every corridor with their sharp metallic cry. Ambassador Lise pressed her tentacles against her head, trying to block out the sound, but nothing helped. The noise matched the fear that crawled through her chest like ice water. She floated down the main hallway toward the emergency council chamber. Other beings rushed past her, their faces showing the same terror she felt. A Kilthurian diplomat bumped into her, his blue feathers standing on end with panic. He did not even stop to apologize. The doors to the council chamber slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, 12 species sat around the great circular table that had been built for peace talks and trade agreements. Now it served a darker purpose. The holographic display in the center showed a map of their galaxy, but red dots covered nearly half of it. Each red dot was a dead world. High Chancellor Vexar stood at the head of the table, as usually bright blue feathers had turned gray with stress. Dark circles surrounded his large black eyes. He looked like he had not slept in weeks, which was probably true. The Zephyr system fell this morning, he announced to the room, his voice cracked on the words, "It makes 4 complete star systems in 6 months, 15 billion souls gone." Room fell silent except for the distant alarm bells. Ambassador Lise took her place at the table and looked at the display. The red tide was spreading faster now. Each month brought news of more dead worlds, more consumed populations. "Do we have any survivors?" asked General Korbach of the Titan Defense Corps. He was the only military leader left in the Union, and his people were known for their strength. Even he looked small and frightened. 3 escape pods made it to the outer system before ... And GT, Czar. And GT paused, unable to finish the sentence. "The crews are being treated for shock. They all tell the same story. Devourers came without warning. No attempt at communication, no demands or negotiations. They simply began consuming everything." Dr. Murren of the Science Council raised a shaking hand. "The biological analysis of their technology continues to disturb our researchers. They appear to be converting organic matter directly into more of themselves. Every person they consume becomes part of their collective." "What about their ships?" General Corbex asked. "Not ships in any sense we understand. They seem to be grown rather than built living crystal formations that can survive in space and reproduce themselves using consumed organic material." Dr. Murren's voice was flat with exhaustion. "We estimate that each world they consume doubles their fleet size." Ambassador Lisa spoke for the first time. "What of our defense forces?" The silence that followed was answer enough. General Corbex cleared his throat. "The 3rd Defense Fleet engaged them at Kepler 7. Our ships were designed for peacekeeping missions against other civilized species. The Devourers simply swarmed them. Out of 40 ships, only 3 returned. And GT, I 3. And GT, Vexter repeated softly. And those were only because the Devourers were too busy consuming the wreckage to pursue the ethereal representative, Zenera shimmered with distress. Her energy form pulsed with weak light. Surely some species in the galaxy have faced such threats before. What of the great warrior civilizations from the outer rim? All gone, replied Vexar. The CR Gemini destroyed itself in civil wars. 2 centuries ago, the Zephyrian Empire. Fell the plague, the Titan clans. Scattered after their home world was destroyed by internal fighting. Every species capable of true warfare has either died out or turned their weapons on themselves. Then we are alone, whispered Dr. Murrin. Not entirely. Vexar activated a new section of the holographic display. Small spiral arm appeared far from the main trade routes. Our deep space survey probes cataloged a species here 50 years ago. They call themselves humans. Murmurs ran around the table. The humans were young, barely achieving faster than light travel. Their technology was primitive compared to Union standards. Most species dismissed them as insignificant. What could such a primitive species possibly do against the devourers? Asked General Corbex. Vexter's feathers rippled with discomfort. The cultural assessment team filed some unusual reports. The humans appear to be the only species they have encountered that has never known true peace. Their entire recorded history is one continuous cycle of warfare. Barbaric sniffed Ambassador. Thrix of the Trade Federation, perhaps. Vexar continued, but effective. They have weapons capable of destroying planets. Their soldiers undergo training that are military psychologists classify as systematic brutalization. They have turned killing into both science and art. Zenara pulsed with horror. You cannot be serious. You want to invite such monsters into civilized space. I want to survive, Vexter replied. Sharply, look at the display. At current rates of expansion, the devourers will reach our core worlds in less than 2 years. Our children will be consumed. Our civilizations will be erased. Everything we have built over 3,000 years of peace will become food for their hive mind. Room fell silent again. Everyone stared at the red tide creeping across the galaxy map. Each delegate could see their home world in the path of destruction. Dr. Murrin spoke carefully. What exactly are you proposing? Chancellor, I'm proposing that we send a message to Earth. We ask for their help, and if they refuse, ask General Korvax, then we die with our principles intact, Vexter replied. But if they accept, we might live to rebuild our civilizations. Ambassador Lisa's turned one of her tentacles toward the display. What do we know about their military capabilities? Bexar activated another file. Images appeared showing human weapons and soldiers. The beings around the table recoiled in horror. Humans look like predators with forward-facing eyes, invisible muscles. Their weapons were brutal and efficient, designed for maximum destruction. They possess something called nuclear weapons, Vexar continued, devices that can level entire cities with a single explosion. They also have biological weapons, chemical weapons, and kinetic bombardment systems. Their military doctrine appears to focus on overwhelming force and total victory. They sound like the devourers themselves, whispered Ambassador Thrick. No, said General Korvax slowly. We was studying the human military data with professional interest. The devourers are a plague. These humans are predators. There is a difference. Plagues consume everything in their path. Predators choose their prey. Vexar nodded. The question before us is simple. Do we maintain our principles and face certain extinction, or do we compromise them for a chance at survival? The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some Delegates argued that asking for help from such a violent species would corrupt everything the Union represented. Others pointed out that extinction would end their principles forever. Anyway, in the end, the vote was close. 7 species voted to send the message, 5 voted against. Ambassador Lisa's cast the deciding vote. For her people, we will send the message, she said quietly, but I pray to the depths that we do not come to regret this choice. High Chancellor Vexter moved to the communications console. His hands shook as he began composing the most important message in galactic history. Every word had to be perfect. They were not just asking for military aid, they were asking monsters to save them from other monsters. To the government and military forces of Earth, he began. The Galactic Union faces an extinction level threat. A hostile force known as the Devourers is consuming our worlds and populations at an accelerating rate. Our defensive capabilities have proven insufficient. We formally request immediate military assistance. The survival of 12 peaceful species depends on your answer. Will you help us? He stared at the message for a long moment, then looked around the room at the frightened faces of his fellow delegates. With a heavy heart, he pressed the transmission button. The message rocketed toward the Sol system at faster than light speed, carrying the desperate plea of a dying civilization. In 3 weeks it would reach Earth. In 3 weeks they would learn what kind of saviors they had summoned from the darkness between the stars. The alarm bells continued to ring, counting down the hours until their answer arrived. The message from space reached Earth on a Tuesday morning. It arrived at Solar Defense Command headquarters, buried deep beneath the Colorado mountains, where Admiral Jake Morrison was drinking his 3rd cup of coffee and reviewing patrol reports from the outer system. The communications officer, Lieutenant Ben Harris, burst into the command center with wide eyes. Sir, you need to see this immediately. We just received a transmission from outside the solar system. Admiral Morrison set down his coffee cup. Pirates again? No, sir, it's first contact. The command center fell silent. Every officer turned to stare at Lieutenant Harris. First contact had been theoretical for decades. Earth's deep space probes had found evidence of other civilizations, but no direct communication had ever been established. Are you certain it's legitimate? Morrison asked. The transmission uses mathematical principles and star charts. That would be impossible to fake, sir. It's definitely from an alien civilization. They call themselves the Galactic Union. Morrison activated the main display screen. Let's hear it. The alien message played in broken English, translated by some kind of universal communication device. The voice sounded tired and desperate as the message continued, describing worlds consumed by creatures called Devourers. The mood in the command center grew darker when the message ended with a plea for military assistance. Morrison rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Get me the Joint Chiefs emergency meeting in 1 hour, and someone wake up the president within an hour. The most powerful military leaders on Earth gathered in the secure conference room. General Carl Stone from the Army sat across from Admiral Patricia Hayes of the Navy. Air Force General Lisa Park occupied the seat next to Colonel Ryan Cross from the Space Marines. Each had reviewed the alien message and the basic tactical data provided. Gentlemen, ladies, Morrison began, we Have a situation. An alien civilization has asked for our help against what appears to be an extinctional level threat. President Martinez appeared on the main screen via secure video link. Admiral, what's your assessment? The data suggests these devourers are some kind of hive mind that consumes organic life to reproduce themselves. They've already destroyed multiple star systems. The Union species seem to be peaceful, with limited military capabilities. General Stone leaned forward. What kind of limited? Their warships appear to be lightly armed patrol vessels designed for peacekeeping. No heavy weapons, no planetary bombardment capabilities, no chemical or biological warfare systems. They fight like police officers, not soldiers. Colonel Cross pulled up the tactical displays. These devourers sound like a classic swarm enemy. It's overwhelming numbers, no individual intelligence, pure aggression. It's the kind of threat our doctrine was designed to handle. Admiral Hayes studied the star charts. What are we looking at for deployment? This is way outside our normal operational range. 15 destroyers, 8 cruisers, 3 dreadnoughts, and the carrier Valkyrie. Morrison replied, 30,000 Marines, 50,000 Army full support contingents. We can establish forward bases in Union space using their infrastructure. General Park raised an eyebrow. That's nearly half our deep space fleet. If these devourers reach our space, we'll need every ship anyway. Morrison pointed out. Better to fight them there than here. President Martinez's face showed concern. What about diplomatic considerations? These aliens asked for help, but they might not approve of our methods. Room fell quiet. Everyone understood what the president meant. Human military doctrine had evolved through millennia of warfare against other humans. It was efficient, brutal, and effective. Other species might find it disturbing. General Stone spoke first. Mr. President, they asked for military assistance against an enemy that's committing genocide on a galactic scale. They didn't ask for a police action or a rescue mission. They asked for war. Question is whether we tell them what they're getting at. Colonel Cross, our preliminary cultural analysis suggests these Union species are extremely peaceful, might have moral objections to our standard operating procedures. Admiral Morrison stood up and walked to the tactical display. Look at this data. 4 billion sentient beings dead in 6 months. Entire species wiped out. World stripped of all organic life. The devourers don't take prisoners. They don't negotiate, and they don't show mercy. He turned back to face the group. These aliens called for help because their peaceful civilization is being exterminated by monsters. If we go in there with restricted rules of engagement and limited weapons, we'll just become more casualties. What are you proposing? Asked President Martinez. Full rules of engagement. Alpha, no holds barred. We go in there to win, not to look good doing it. The room was silent for a long moment. Rules of engagement. Alpha meant total war. Chemical weapons, biological warfare, nuclear bombardment, psychological operations. Everything in humanity's arsenal would be available. Admiral Hayes broke the silence. The Union species might not approve when they see what that looks like. In practice, they asked for monsters. Morrison replied coldly, we'll give them exactly what they need, not what they think they want. General Park nodded. Slowly, the devourers sound like they Operate as a hive mind, our anti-swarm. Tactics should be extremely effective. Disruption weapons, area denial systems. Psychological warfare designed to break. Collective consciousness. About supply lines, asked Colonel Cross. We'll take what we need from Concord. Devourer systems, Morrison answered. Establish processing facilities too. Convert their technology into resources. We can use standard scorched earth. Doctrine, President Martinez looked. Troubled, are we sure this isn't a trap? Draw our forces away from Earth, then. Attack while we're gone, Admiral Hayes. Shook her head, the tactical data. Doesn't support that theory, sir. These devourers are pure aggression with no subtlety. If they could reach Earth, they would have attacked directly. Instead of using deception, Morrison returned to his seat. Mr. President, the way I see it, we have two choices. We can sit here and wait for the devourers to finish consuming the galaxy and eventually reach us, or we can take the fight to them while we still have allies. And if the Union species don't approve of our methods, then they'll learn why Earth never developed a peaceful civilization. General Stone said grimly, we've been preparing for galactic warfare our entire evolutionary history. We just didn't know it yet. The debate continued for another hour, but the conclusion was inevitable. Earth's leaders understood that humanity's violent nature, which had always been seen as a weakness, might finally serve a useful purpose. President Martinez made the final decision. Admiral Morrison, you have authorization for Operation Hellbringer. Deploy with full combat readiness and rules of engagement. Alpha, show the galaxy why humans are the species that looked at a hostile universe and said. Morrison saluted. Yes, sir. How long do we have to prepare? The Union message indicated their outer defense lines are collapsing. I'd say 6 weeks before their core worlds are threatened. Can you be ready? We'll be ready in 4 weeks, Morrison promised. Mr. President, when we come back, the galaxy is going to be a very different place. The meeting ended with orders flowing to every military installation. On Earth, shipyards worked around the clock to prepare the fleet. Marines sharpened their weapons and reviewed tactics for fighting in alien environments. Army units packed equipment designed for planetary warfare. The Space Force calculated hyperspace routes to unknown sectors of the galaxy. On Earth's military bases, soldiers prepared for humanity's first galactic war. They loaded weapons that could glass planets, tested armor designed to survive in alien atmospheres, reviewed tactical manuals written for fighting inhuman enemies. Admiral Morrison stood in the command center 4 weeks later, watching the final ships join the fleet in high orbit. 37 warships hung in space above Earth, ready to carry humanity's answer to the alien plea for help. The answer was simple. Earth was sending its monsters to fight other monsters. Lieutenant Harris approached with the final casualty projections. Morrison read them without expression. Numbers were high, but acceptable for the scale of the operation. Sir, Harris asked quietly, do you think the aliens understand what they've asked for? Morrison watched the fleet formation on the main screen. Each ship carried enough firepower to devastate entire worlds. The soldiers aboard had been trained to view warfare as both science and art. They would show no mercy to enemies who showed none to others. No, he answered finally, but they will. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace near Kepler station with the precision of a hammer blow. 37. Warships appeared in perfect formation, their dark holes bristling with weapons that the Galactic Union had never imagined possible. High Chancellor Vexar stood in the station's main observation deck watching the human ships through the reinforced viewing ports. His blue feathers had turned completely gray with stress over the past month. Beside him, Ambassador Lise pressed her tentacles against the glass, trying to understand what she was seeing. "They are so much larger than our ships," she whispered. The human vessels were massive compared to Union designs, where alien ships were built for beauty and comfort. These were built for war. No elegant curves or decorative elements, just brutal efficiency wrapped in armor plating thick enough to stop planetary bombardment. Dr. Murren floated nearby, or scientific instruments recording everything. The energy signatures are unlike anything our databases. The ships carry enough firepower to destroy moons. General Corbex, the last military leader in the Union, studied the formation with professional interest. Look at their positioning, perfect tactical spacing, overlapping fields of fire, ready to engage threats from any direction. These are not peacekeepers, these are apex predators. The communication board chirped with an incoming message. Vexstar activated the main screen, and a human face appeared. The alien delegates recoiled instinctively. The human had cold blue eyes set in a weathered face, with scars visible along his jaw. This was clearly a being who had seen violence and survived it. "Chancellor Vexar, this is Admiral Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. We came as fast as we could." Vexar stepped forward, trying to hide his nervousness. "Admiral Morrison, we are grateful for your response, though we must admit some concern about reports we have received regarding human military capabilities." Morrison's expression did not change. "What kind of reports?" Ambassador Lisa's spoke up, her voice shaking. "Intelligence suggests your species has developed weapons of mass destruction. Before achieving space travel, your soldiers undergo training that our psychologists classify as systematic brutalization. Your historical records document tactics that our ethicists consider war crimes." The human admiral nodded calmly. "All accurate. You asked for help against an extinction-level threat. Did you expect us to defeat your enemy with peaceful negotiations?" The Union delegation exchanged worried glances. Dr. Murren activated her personal scanner and aimed it at the human ships. The readings made her gasp. "Chancellor, these vessels are carrying weapons that could sterilize entire planets, nuclear warheads, chemical dispersal systems, biological warfare containers. We studied your data during our journey here." Morrison continued. "The Devourers have consumed 4 billion sentient beings. In 6 months, they show no intelligence beyond basic tactics, no response to communication attempts, and they convert organic matter into more of themselves. What exactly would we negotiate with them? The order in which they consume your children." Vexter's feathers rippled with distress. "Perhaps we could attempt a limited engagement, minimal force to drive them back without excessive destruction." Laugh was genuinely amused, which somehow made it more terrifying. "Chancellor, you called for help because your peaceful civilization is being exterminated by monsters. Now you want to limit how we save you. This is war. not a philosophical debate. General, Korbach stepped forward, surely there are rules governing warfare between civilized species, conventions that limit the scope of violence. There are. Morrison agreed. The Geneva Convention, the Hague Protocols, dozens of treaties limiting warfare between civilized peoples, none of which applied to hiveman parasites trying to consume the galaxy. The human admiral leaned forward in his chair, his voice dropping to a whisper that carried more menace than shouting. You want to know what we are? We're the species that looked at a hostile universe and decided to fight back. We turned our planet's apex predators into pets. We split atoms for power and fused them for weapons. We built machines that could think and taught them to kill. We've spent our entire evolutionary history asking one question: how do we destroy our enemies more effectively? The silence in the observation deck was complete. Even the background hum of the station's life support seemed muted. Ambassador Lisa's backed away from the viewing port, her tentacles curled with fear. What have we done? Vexar whispered. You've done what was necessary to survive, Morrison replied. Now let us do what we do best, Dr. Murren's scanners beeped with new readings. Admiral, we're detecting unusual energy signatures from your smaller vessels. What are those ships carrying? Morrison's smile was predatory. Those are our troop transports carrying 30,000 Marines and 50,000 Army personnel, along with their equipment. General Korbach asked, though he seemed afraid of the answer. Plasma rifles that can punch through 3 m of steel, sonic weapons that shatter crystal formations, chemical agents that dissolve organic bonds, kinetic bombardment systems that hit with the force of meteors, powered armor that turns individual soldiers into walking tanks. The list continued. For several minutes, each weapon system sounded more horrifying than the last. The Union delegates realized they had not asked for military assistance. They had summoned an army of demons. Soldiers. Vexar began carefully. What kind of training do they receive? Combat conditioning from childhood, physical training that would kill most species, psychological preparation for extreme violence, technical education and weapons, explosives and battlefield medicine, cultural indoctrination that death is preferable to defeat. Morrison paused, studying the horrified faces on his screen. Chancellor, let me be very clear about something. Your people ask for help against an enemy that wants to consume every living thing in the galaxy. We are that help. We're not here to make you feel comfortable about the process. Ambassador Lisa's founder voice. And GT. Ah, but surely you have some code of honor. And GT. Some limit to the violence you're willing to employ. Our code is simple, Morrison replied. Protect the innocent. Destroy the enemy. Win at any cost. The devourers aren't prisoners of war or political opponents. And GT. They're a plague that needs to be eliminated. General Korbach looked at the tactical display showing devourer movements. Admiral, our latest intelligence indicates they're massing for an attack. On the Verne system, 3 million civilians are trapped on the planet. Morrison's expression hardened. How long until they arrive? 18 hours at most. We'll be there in 12. Morrison turned to someone off-screen. All ships prepare for combat. Jump destination. Verne system. Rules of engagement alpha are in effect. The Union delegates had no idea what rules of engagement Alpha meant, but the way Morrison said it made them afraid to ask. Admiral Vexar said desperately, "Please remember that there are innocent civilians on that planet, our people. Value all life." Morrison's image flickered as his ship prepared to jump to hyperspace. "Chancellor, in 12 hours, you're going to see why Earth never developed a peaceful species. The Devourers chose the wrong galaxy to invade." Transmission ended, leaving the Union delegates alone with their fears. Through the viewing port they watched the human fleet form up for the jump to hyperspace. The ships moved with deadly grace, like sharks preparing to hunt. "They're not coming to save us," Ambassador Lisa said quietly. "They're coming to show us what monsters look like when they fight other monsters." Dr. Murrin checked her instruments. One final time. The energy readings are off. Our scales, whatever they're planning to do at Thern, it's going to be visible. From here, General Korvac stared at the empty space where the human fleet had been. "We asked for saviors and got predators instead. Question is, will there be anything left of our civilization when they're finished?" Hi. Chancellor Vexar touched the communication console with a shaking hand. "Send word to all Union worlds. Tell them help is coming, but also tell them to prepare for a kind of warfare they've never imagined." The human fleet disappeared into hyperspace, carrying Earth's answer to the galaxy's desperate plea. And GT, ice. And GT. In 12 hours, the Union would learn what it meant to unleash humanity upon their enemies. In 12 hours, they would discover the true price of salvation. The Devourer fleet approached their end, prime like a disease spreading through space. 10,000 crystalline ships moved in perfect formation, their surfaces gleaming with an oily rainbow shine. Each vessel pulsed with the same rhythm, controlled by a single massive intelligence that saw all organic life as food. On the planet below, evacuation ships struggled to lift off with their cargo of terrified civilians. The beautiful crystal cities of Thuron Prime stretched across 3 continents, home to 3 million beings who had never known war. Now they ran through streets in panic, carrying whatever they could grab. High Chancellor Vexar watched the evacuation efforts from the command ship. Harmony, his communications officer, a young Kilthurian named Fleeks, monitored multiple channels at once. "Sir, we've only evacuated half the population," Fleek reported. "The Devourers will arrive before we can save the rest." Extar closed his eyes. Another world would die. Another species would be consumed. The Union's peaceful way had failed again. Then space twisted. The human fleet appeared. 37 warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect attack formation. They moved nothing like Union vessels, which traveled in elegant curves and gentle approaches. The human ships cut through space like bullets, direct and violent in their purpose. Admiral Morrison's voice crackled over the communication system. "All Union vessels, clear the combat zone immediately. Is about to become very dangerous." Admiral Vexar replied. "There are still civilians on the planet. We know that's why we're here." The human fleet spread out in a formation the Union had never seen before. Instead of the traditional line formation that civilized species used, they created overlapping fields of fire that covered every possible escape route for the Devourers. On the destroyer Reaper, Captain Danny Foster watched the tactical display. With satisfaction, the devourers were flying straight into a trap, too focused on their target to notice the predators. Waiting for them, target locks confirmed. On primary cluster, reported as weapons. Officer, all ships, this is Warhammer. Actual Admiral Morrison's voice echoed. Across the fleet, deploy Pandora's box. Foster smiled grimly. Pandora's box was humanity's name for unrestricted warfare against inhuman enemies. No rules, no mercy, no limits. Fire, he commanded. The human fleet opened fire with weapons the galaxy had never seen before. Plasma torpedoes launched from the Reaper, each one containing a payload of weaponized nanites designed to eat through crystal formations. The cruiser Nemesis activated quantum disruptor arrays that collapsed matter at the molecular level. The carrier Valkyrie launched fighter squadrons equipped with singularity missiles. The Devourer formation shattered under the assault. Crystalline ships exploded in brilliant flashes as their structure dissolved under quantum bombardment. Hivemind had never faced weapons designed specifically to destroy its, quote, crystal-based biology, but the humans were just getting started. Colonel Lisa Park commanded the Marine landing force from her assault ship. While the space battle raged above her, transports punched through the Devourer formation and headed for the planet's surface. All units prepare for hot landing, she announced. Intelligence indicates heavy Devourer presence in all major population centers. Rules of engagement Alpha are in effect. Show no mercy. The transport ships landed in the capital city of Thern Prime like meteors. Ramps dropped and human marines poured out into a nightmare landscape. Crystalline Devour constructs covered the streets like a metallic plague, converting everything organic into more of themselves. The Marines advanced behind walls of plasma fire. Their weapons turned the air itself into a burning wall that consumed everything in its path. Behind them came combat engineers with sonic charges calibrated to shatter crystal at specific frequencies. Park watched her soldiers work with professional satisfaction. Each Marine was a walking weapons platform equipped with enough firepower to level a city block. Their armor could stop anything the Devourers could throw at them, and their training had prepared them for warfare against inhuman enemies. Flame units lighted up, she ordered. Squads of Marines advanced with plasma flamers that reached temperatures hot enough to melt steel. The Devourer constructs tried to swarm them, but humans had fought swarm enemies before. They moved in overlapping formations, each soldier covering his neighbors, creating zones of destruction that nothing could penetrate from orbit. Major Susan Blake coordinated the Army's contribution to the battle. Her soldiers had established fire-based positions around the planet and begun systematic orbital bombardment using kinetic weapons. Target coordinates confirmed, reported her artillery officer. Devourer concentration in Sector 7. Fire for effect, Blake commanded. Tungsten rods dropped from orbit like spears thrown by gods, each one hit with the force of a nuclear weapon, but left no radiation. Entire city blocks vanished in seconds as the kinetic bombardment erased Devourer concentrations from existence. The hive mind reeled under the assault. It had consumed dozens of species before, but none had fought back with such calculated brutality. The humans seemed to know exactly how to hurt crystal-based life forms on Kepler. Station, the Union delegates watched the battle through long-range sensors. Dr. Murren's instruments recorded energy. Readings that should have been impossible. They're not just fighting them, she whispered in horror. They're systematically exterminating them. Ambassador Lisa's watched plasma fire sweep across the planet's surface. Look at the precision. They're burning out the devourers while avoiding civilian areas. But at what cost? Vexter said. Half the planet is on fire, General. Korbach studied the tactical display with growing understanding. No, look closer. They're using controlled burns to create fire breaks around population centers. This isn't random destruction. Surgical removal of the infection. The battle continued for 12 hours. Human fighters darted through space like deadly insects, launching attacks that dissolved devourer ships from the inside. Out on the planet, Marines and Army units worked together to clear the infestation city by city, building by building. The devourers tried every tactic their hive mind could devise. They swarmed the human positions only to be met with chemical weapons that corroded their crystal structures. They attempted to corrupt human communications but encountered firewalls and security systems designed by a species that had weaponized information itself. They tried to retreat, but the humans had anticipated that too. The fleet formation trapped them in a killing field where every escape route led to more weapons. By the end of the day, 10,000 devourer ships had been reduced to floating debris. Crystalline plague that had consumed 4 billion beings was wiped from existence without a single human casualty. But the Union observers were more terrified than grateful. The planet's surface is scarred beyond recognition, Vexar said quietly to Admiral Morrison during the post-battle conference. Entire continents are burning. Morrison's image on the screen showed no emotion. The fires will burn out in 3 days. The atmosphere will clear in 2 months. Your people can rebuild in a year. The alternative was extinction in 6 hours. Oh, the methods you used: chemical weapons, orbital bombardment, biological agents. These are tools of genocide. These are tools of victory, Morrison corrected. The devourers weren't prisoners of war or political opponents. They were a virus that needed to be eliminated. You called us monsters because that's what you needed. Don't complain when we deliver. Dr. Murren spoke up from her position at the science station. Admiral, our sensors detected weapons we don't understand, energy signatures that violated known physics. Humanity has been preparing for galactic warfare our entire evolutionary history, Morrison replied. We just didn't know it until now. Every conflict, every innovation, every advancement in our destructive capabilities was preparation for this moment. Ambassador Lises looked at the tactical displays showing the complete destruction of the devourer force. Oh, and GT. You didn't just defeat them, you erased them. Correct, that was the point. The communication ended, leaving the Union delegates alone with the knowledge of what they had unleashed. Through the viewing ports, they could see the human fleet already moving toward the next devourer concentration. They fight like the universe owes them a victory. General Korvac said quietly. Maybe it does. Vexter replied. Maybe that's what it takes to survive in a hostile galaxy. The human fleet disappeared into hyperspace, hunting the next group of devourers. Behind them, their prime burned with cleansing fire, free of the crystalline plague but forever changed by humanity's brutal salvation. 6 months after the first human ship arrived at Kepler Station, the Devourer threat was completely eliminated. The crystalline plague that had consumed 4 billion beings was reduced to inert mineral deposits scattered across dead space. Entire hive clusters that had taken decades to grow were sterilized hours by human weapons. The victory celebration on Kepler Station felt more like a funeral. Union species mingled uncomfortably with human personnel in the main gathering hall. The aliens kept their distance from the humans, unsure whether to thank their saviors or flee from them. Even in their dress uniforms, the humans looked like predators. At a peace conference, Captain Danny Foster sat at the bar next to Major Susan Blake, both holding drinks and discussing the campaign with casual professionalism. Nearby Keelian delegates listened with growing horror to their conversation. The phosphorus rounds worked better than expected against the crystal formations, Foster commented, sipping his beer. Clean burn complete. Molecular breakdown, no residual contamination. I preferred the sonic disruption charges, Blake replied. More elegant, one frequency pulse, and entire hive clusters just fell apart like broken glass. What about those new biological agents your people developed, the ones that corrupted their communication networks? Brilliant work by the science teams. Targeted the crystalline matrix that carried their hive mind signals, turned their greatest strength into a weakness. The Keelthuran delegates moved away from the bar, their blue feathers trembling with distress. To the humans, this was shop talk about tools and techniques. To the aliens, it sounded like demons discussing the best ways to commit genocide. High Chancellor Vexar found Admiral Morrison on the station's observation deck, staring out at the stars. The human looked older than when they had first met, his face lined with the weight of command and the burden of decisions that had saved the galaxy. Admiral Vexar began carefully. The Galactic Union owes you a debt we can never repay. And GT, how? No debt, Morrison replied without turning around. Did what we came to do, yes, but at such cost. Your methods, your weapons, the devastation you left in your wake. We asked for saviors and received something else entirely. Monsters, Morrison finished. I know the question is, do you regret it? Vestar considered this question. The Devourer threat was gone. Union worlds were being rebuilt. Children who would have been consumed were alive to grow up. Entire species continued to exist because humanity had been willing to do what the Union could not. No, he said finally, we do not regret asking for your help, but we fear what we have learned about ourselves, that when faced with extinction, we were willing to unleash hell itself. Morrison finally turned to face the Chancellor. Fear is good. It means you understand the price of victory. Oh, species don't survive long enough to learn that lesson. Will you stay? Help us rebuild. Teach us to defend ourselves. The Admiral's smile was sad but genuine. No, you called us here to solve a problem. The problem is solved. If we stayed, we would become the very thing you needed us to destroy. I do not understand. Morrison walked to the large viewing window and pointed at the human fleet in orbit. Look at those ships, Chancellor. Each one carries enough firepower to destroy a planet. The soldiers aboard have been trained to view warfare as both science and art. They have weapons that can kill on a molecular level and minds that can calculate exactly how much force is needed to break an enemy's will. He paused, his reflection ghost-like in the transparent aluminum. We came here as your allies because you had a common enemy, but what happens when that enemy is gone? What happens when peaceful species look at human military power and decide we are the threat? Vexter's feathers rippled with understanding. You would become what you fought against, not intentionally, but power corrupts even when wielded by those with good intentions. Better that we return to our corner of the galaxy and let you rebuild in peace. But what if another threat emerges, something worse than they devourers? Morrison's expression hardened. Then you know where to find us. Across the station, other conversations were taking place between humans and aliens. Each one reinforced the same uncomfortable truth: the galaxy had been saved by beings I could never truly understand or accept. Dr. Murrin approached Colonel Lisa Park in the science section. Colonel, I have been studying the weapons your people used against the devourers. The level of destruction they caused is unlike anything in our databases. That was the point, Park replied simply. The devourers were a total extinction threat. Half measures would have just prolonged the suffering, but some of your weapons could destroy entire star systems. Why would any species develop such things? Park looked at the alien scientist with something approaching pity. Because we learned a long time ago that if you want peace, you prepare for war. If you want to survive, you become the most dangerous thing in your neighborhood. That seems like a very lonely way to exist. Loneliness is better than extinction, Park answered. Your people lived in peace for 3,000 years because nothing truly dangerous found you. We lived in constant conflict because everything dangerous found us first. Ambassador Lease floated near the communication center, listening to reports from newly liberated worlds. Numbers were staggering: 15 star systems cleansed of devourer presence, 40 billion lives saved, an entire galactic arm returned to organic control. General Corbex joined her at the console. The final casualty reports are in, he said quietly. How many humans did we lose? None. Lisa's turned to stare at him. None. In 6 months of galactic warfare, their medical technology is as advanced as their weapons. They can regrow limbs, repair brain damage, and cure diseases we consider fatal. Soldiers who should have died were fighting again within days. They have conquered death itself. Not conquered, postponed, but long enough to win wars that would destroy other species. The implications hung in the water around them. The humans were not just superior warriors, they were superior in every aspect of survival. Evolution had shaped them into the ultimate survivors, and that made them terrifying even as allies. As the celebration continued, reports arrived from human cleanup operations throughout former devourer space. The efficiency was breathtaking and horrifying in equal measure. Entire star systems had been sterilized of crystalline contamination and prepared for codified by Union species, but the methods used would Union ethicists' nightmares for centuries. The human fleet began departing the next day. One by one, the massive warships activated their hyperspace drives and disappeared into the void. They left behind a galaxy that was safe but forever changed by their presence. Admiral Morrison was among the last to leave. His final transmission to the Union was brief and to the point. Chancellor Vexar, the galaxy is yours. Again, build well, build wisely, and remember that there are worse things in the dark between stars than they devourers. When you find them, and you will, you know how to reach us. The transmission ended. The Warhammer disappeared into hyperspace, carrying Earth monsters home to the darkness they came from. High Chancellor Vexar stood alone on the observation deck at empty space where the human fleet had been. Around him, Union species began the long work of rebuilding their civilization. But they would build it with the knowledge of what they were capable of. When survival was at stake, Ambassador Lees joined him at the window. What do we tell our children about what happened? Hear the truth. Vexar replied that when monsters came to destroy us, we called upon bigger monsters to save us. And that's sometimes the only thing that can protect civilization is the temporary abandonment of it. Do you think we will see them again? Vexar touched a control panel accessing the deep space monitoring network far beyond the edge of Union space. Sensors detected the faint signatures of human ships returning to Earth. They moved with the same deadly precision they had shown in battle, carrying their weapons and their warriors back to whatever corner of hell had spawned them. Yes, he said quietly, because this galaxy is vast and dangerous, and we are still the same peaceful species that needed salvation. When the next threat emerges, and it will, we will call upon our monsters again, and they will come. It will come, Vector confirmed, because that is what monsters do. They protect their territory, and like it or not, we are part of their territory now. The Union began to rebuild, carrying the burden of knowledge that their survival depended on beings they could never truly understand. Somewhere in the dark between stars, Earth's monsters waited patiently for the next threat to emerge. And in the depth of space, ancient things stirred, unaware that the galaxy now had guardians who would show them no mercy.